Follow us on Twitter at ghettoplex_mp4, on Instagram at ghettoplex.mp4, and on YouTube at ghettoplex. The Penguin. Is it better than The Sopranos? Clickbait for sure. If the title of the video hit you a type of way, just know it's clickbait. I mean, I have a bit of a Batman bias myself. I've been a fan since I've been in diapers. But the story, coherently, is it better? Yes. Is the structure better? Yes. Is it culturally more significant? Yeah. But again, I don't want you guys to think I'm not a Soprano fan. Tony Soprano, he's a top G. Again, don't ever forget it. Top Soprano. But I just wanted to draw the comparison because of the mafia style series, and it's on Max, HBO, whatever you want to call it. Plus, Tony and Oswald both have similar mother issues. Well, not that they have similar mother issues, but they're similar in that they have mother issues, mommy issues, however you want to title that. I do want to give a shout out to Danny DeVito because he is one of the OG Penguins that has a story that is just as tragic as the story with Colin Farrell's Penguin. So if you haven't seen Tim Burton's Batman Returns, that is a film I highly recommend, especially if you enjoy the Penguin character. I would say the conclusion of Batman Returns with Danny DeVito's Penguin is rather emotional. I rewatched the movie a couple years ago and I shed a tear at the end because I was just like, wow, this is so tragic. I remember watching it as a kid and just thinking, yeah, it's Batman. But as an adult, and when you really understand the story behind these tragic characters, you're like, wow, this is sad. I would say one of the tragic things of this film is just the Penguin's relationship with his mother. It's so twisted. At the same time, there's a lot of love. It's a lot of twisted love, but it's also very tragic love. There's layers to this relationship of love and I guess I would say resentment, maybe not hatred because they don't hate each other, but there's a lot of resentment for each other for specific things. I really love that the Batman film and that this series use a lot of material from The Long Halloween. I think obviously, a lot of casual comic readers that grew up with Batman like me, The Long Halloween is a fan favorite, and a lot of films, including Christopher Nolan's trilogy, take a lot of material from The Long Halloween, which is, I would say, I appreciate as a fan. I appreciate that they respect the lore. The show, though, features no Batman, so sorry, spoiler alert. Or I guess technically it does kind of feature Batman in a very small way, but it's, it's very much the Penguin's spotlight, not the Bat's spotlight. I don't think there's been a show ever since the animated series that's had quite the focus on the Falcone and Maroni family. The one thing, though, that kind of bothered me about this show is that Carmine Falcone is played by a different actor than the one from the Batman film. They have Mark Strong as Carmine Falcone in the Penguin series, which I thought, Mark Strong would have been a better Carmine Falcone for the film as well. I know that in the film, I forget the actor's name, the guy that plays, who is it? The guy that's obsessed with feet in Mr. Deeds? I forget his name. But yeah, he's a great actor. I just think that Mark Strong definitely fits a better Carmine Falcone than that guy from the Batman. Also, too, wow, they really changed a lot with Sofia Falcone's character, at least from The Long Halloween. You know what? I don't really remember Sofia Falcone from any other series than from the Long Halloween and Dark Victory comic book series. I don't know. I don't recall her being in any other comic book series for the Batman other than those two. Sofia Falcone's film or her TV adaptation is very much different from her comic book adaptation as well, because in the comics, Sofia is like a giant. They call her El Gigante or Gigante, however they, if you want to say it with the Italian twang to it. But yeah, so in the comic books, Sofia, she's like this physical force. She's a tank woman. But it's funny to see her in this show though, because she is like so fragile looking. But there's something about her eyes too. She's just got like these puppy eyes. She's like, you can't help but feel bad for her. And for those of you who don't know, well, I mean, I'm sure you do know, because if you've seen the Batman, also from The Long Halloween, well, Dark Victory more so, and Catwoman, Women in Rome, Selina Kyle is a Falcone, so that makes Selina and Sofia sisters, the Falcone sisters. And I wonder, will they meet in the Batman Part 2? It definitely seems like that's a possibility. But many creative liberties were taken in this series. It's like they've taken existing characters and somewhat existing lore and kind of remixed it and changed it for the show. Which normally, when they change a lot of the lore, it's, a lot of fans get mad. But for this series, I think it really worked. I really enjoyed the changes they did make. I think they were appropriate and they weren't just for nothing. It's not like they just changed characters for DEI purposes or just to subvert the fans or anything like that. You know what I'm saying? There was a lot of narrative purpose for the changes to these characters that we're not used to seeing in comic book form. But the changes, I think, were still narratively very impactful. So I think the fans have really enjoyed the series because the stories have been well written regardless of the changes to the characters from the comics. Usually when you see a TV adaptation that was spun off of a film, you worry about the quality of the production. But I will have to say that the production in The Penguin is really good. Gotham still very much looks like the Gotham from the Batman, which I'm sure was probably difficult to maintain as far as budget. And being that it is a limited series, I wonder, does limited series mean that this is a one and done? Because, I kind of hope it is. I love the show, but I don't want this to go on for like 10 seasons, you know what I'm saying? I kind of hope that whatever happens in the Batman Part 2, let's say if for some reason the Penguin dies in the Batman Part 2, will they create another spin-off series, a limited series based off of another villain? Like, what if they introduce Victor Zsasz in Batman 2 and then we get a spin-off of Victor Zsasz or something like that? It doesn't have to be that character. I think it would be really cool. I think Victor Zsasz would fit perfectly into this more realistic version of Batman. It's not so fantastical. It's more crime. It's more on the criminal element than it is on like a Dr. Freeze type character. Though a Dr. Freeze type character could work if they're going to be doing it in the Batman Part 2, if it's going to be during winter. But what I'm saying is that, Victor Freeze he's a very specific character that needs a specific type of environment. You're not going to see Mr. Freeze around for summer. But Victor Zsasz, though, that's a guy that could carry an entire season of serial killing. But that also leaves me with another question. How much of this show is needed by the general audience? Like, how many people are going to go and watch the Batman Part 2, having not seen the Penguin series, and be able to keep up with it? Because from what I read online, the Batman Part 2 is going to pick up immediately after the end of the Penguin series. So how much of this show is going to have an effect on the story of the Batman Part 2? Like, are we to have Sofia and Selina meeting in the Batman Part 2? And are the audiences going to be confused by that? I'm curious. Anyways, let's get into spoiler territory. So if you haven't seen the show, if you don't have access to the show, and let's say you don't care about spoilers because you can't watch the show anyways, then this episode is definitely for you. I will get you caught up. So when you watch the Batman Part 2, hopefully a lot of this information will help you get through it. If it feels like there's anything that just seems out of place, like you don't understand, or like there's narrative information that you feel like you're missing out on. Anyways, episode 1, After Hours, where we meet all of our key characters. We begin immediately after the Riddler aftermath. And here it is where we meet Alberto Falcone, who very much from his comic counterpart, he still looks pretty frail. Like in the comics, he looks like a dweeb. And in the series, he also looks like someone you could just beat up. He looks like a guy you could, at the local, club, you could beat his ass with your own bare hands. You don't need a Batman to take this guy down. But he sets off a whole series of events with Penguin, all based on a little insult that sets the Penguin into killer mode by insulting him after the Penguin's kind of opening up to him. It's funny because you kind of realize, like, the Penguin, all he really wants is respect in the city. And his first move is to kill Alberto Falcone. And now he's basically has to make up this story to keep himself clear from the death of Alberto. And when he's trying to stash the body, when he's on his way to stash the body, is when we meet another key character. His name is Victor Aguilar. He's got a stutter like Simple Jack. He's like, please don't hurt me. But man, Victor, what a character, man. All right, we'll get into Victor later. But the Penguin, he's taken Alberto Falcone to basically throw his body in his trunk. But as he's doing that, there's these kids trying to steal his rims or something like that. And among them is this kid, Victor Aguilar. It looks like he's, fresh out of high school. And he's the only person to stay behind after the Penguin comes up and fucking puts the fear in these kids by firing a couple of rounds at them as they're trying to steal his rims. And he makes him kind of do a little bit of his dirty work with him. So Victor's kind of just strung along now, almost like a teacher's pet. But yeah, so we get these two characters who are in a situation with the body of Alberto Falcone. And then we see a freshly released Sofia Falcone has just been released from Arkham, which we will learn about later. And then we get to see Salvatore Maroni, which I was happy to see him in this universe is when I learned, okay, this is really going to be Falcones and Maronis. But that's how we start the first episode off. We meet all of our key characters and we meet some Maronis. Episode 2, we get the Inside Man. And we see Sofia having nightmares about her time from Arkham. Since the Falcones are in distress, we see Penguin team up with Maroni to set up a little bit of a coup in the Falcones. In this episode, there was this hilarious moment, though, where Victor goes and buys tacos for him and the Penguin. The most relatable moment is when the Penguin's like, I said no cilantro. And he says something about like a bar of soap. Like, what do you want? You might as well stick a bar of soap in my mouth or something like that. It was so funny because I always get shit about this from my family about cilantro because I fucking hate cilantro. And they're like, you're not a Mexican. I'm like, you're right. I'm not. I was born in America. Anyways, we then get a glimpse into our dementia mother for the Penguin. This is also a change here from the comics. They give the Penguin two additional brothers to set up this complicated relationship that he has with his mother. Anyways, we also get the funeral for Alberto Falcone, which is also followed by some complicated issues between the Maronis and the Falcones as Sofia gets closer to finding out who actually killed her brother. However, it is thwarted by the Penguin just in time too. In episode 3, we get flashback of the Riddler's flood from Victor's perspective, along with this new drug that's going to take the town, not just the town, but the entire city of Gotham. It's going to become the new demand, along with Penguin and Sofia trying to create a new distributor out of the Triad gang. Episode 4 is some Italian word I can't pronounce. But anyways, we get more on the Sofia, Falcone, and Penguin backstory, especially the setup of Sofia ending up in Arkham. We also learn about her father, Carmine Falcone, being a serial strangler, which the city dubs the Hangman. But they don't know that it's Carmine. It is later pinned on Sofia, which is what ends her up in Arkham Asylum. But from that, we get this whole backstory of Sofia's Arkham history. She also has this Last Supper with the Falcone family. Episode 5, we get Homecoming, where the Penguin creates leverage on the Maronis via little kidnapping. And Sofia changes her name to her surname, which I think because she's not Sofia Gigante from the Long Halloween, she's not physically big. That's why they call her El Gigante in the comics book, is because she's such a giant woman. She's like if the Hulk was a woman. She's not She-Hulk, okay? She's if the Hulk was a woman. This is a different kind of big. She's a Solomon Grundy of a woman. But so I guess they changed that because she's so frail and small looking. And Gigante is just her surname from her mother. So in the show, she takes on her grandfather's surname, which is Gigante, her grandfather from her mother's side, and then makes that the new family name. In the meantime, Penguin makes a new getaway out of Crown Point, which is where Victor is from, Victor Aguilar. And while they're hiding out, Sofia and the Maronis, Sal Maroni, team up with one goal in mind, which is to get the Penguin. And meanwhile, the Penguin is setting up his underground base of operations right underneath Crown Point. This leads us to episode 6, called Hold Summit. The operations for the drug Bliss are in full effect in Penguin's underground lair. Salvatore Maroni and Sofia send a message to the streets with a couple of gang-like executions. Victor Aguilar also gets his first kill in this episode. He is starting to grow as a gangster. He goes from this innocent kid to, developing a bit of a spine. And the Penguin starts to build a new crime family out of these other underground gangs. However, as the Penguin is building all this momentum, Sofia finally gets word from the Penguin's transactional girlfriend, that's what I'll call her, and heads to Crown Point to find where the Penguin has been hiding out. In episode 7, called Top Hat, we see how little Penguin, the child version of Penguin, has always had the monster in him when he kills his own brothers. One, because he feels constantly disrespected by them, because he has this kind of a physical disability, so he feels as if he's not treated the same. So we get the backstory on how the Penguin took his brothers from his mother, all because he kind of just wanted all the love for himself. Salvatore also makes a move on the Penguin's lair, but he gets capped. Well, he doesn't really get capped. He dies in the funniest way possible. He's just like, he is like so angry he gives himself a heart attack. It's kind of hilarious. But Sofia gets a real wake up call when she sees her niece Giaviti. Well, it's a kid's shelter, but it's kind of like a kid's version of Arkham. And so she sees the effect that she's having on an innocent part of her family that is being treated the way herself, Sofia, the way she was treated when she was in Arkham. And she sees that she's kind of put Giaviti in this similar situation. So she kind of has this guilty moment of like realizing that she is that she is the monster just like her family. She has this monster-like force in a different way. Anyways, the episode ends with Sofia bringing down the Penguin's base to crumbles with a little bit of C4. And in episode 8, our finale, we get some backstory of the mom and how she knew the whole time that the Penguin had killed her boys, and yet, like a bird, she could not hate her last hatchlet. You know what I'm saying? She couldn't hate her last little offspring, her last little birdie, her last little baby bird. But it does become bird hunting season when Sofia puts out a hit to all the gangs to bring her the Penguin, which does not work in her favor because the Penguin sets up a little bit of a political checkmate with his one connection in office. And Victor, poor Victor, helps the Penguin succeed in this plan. However, because Victor has gotten so close to the Penguin and he's seen him in all of his vulnerabilities, the Penguin, at this point, through all the trials and tribulations with this feuding family of the Falcones and the Maronis, Victor is the only one who truly knows who the Penguin is. And he's seen his weaknesses, especially his weakness for his mom. So the Penguin now feels like appreciative of Victor to have helped him get to this point. But he's also a loose end. And he's like, I can't be having a loose end. I cannot have a weakness. And I cannot have someone knowing of my weaknesses. So as we get to see Victor Aguilar go from this juvenile criminal kid from Crown Point to the Penguin's right-hand man, the Penguin is like, I cannot let you come along for the rest of this criminal journey of mine, just based on the fact that you've seen me in my weakest points, and I cannot have anyone who knows where my weaknesses are. So he decides to kill Victor Aguilar. It's pretty tragic, actually, because you see Victor as like this. He is kind of still like this innocent kid, even though he's matured a little bit in his criminal form. He still has a little bit of this innocence to him, where he still, he lost his family in that attack from the Riddler, and yet he's kind of found this replacement family in the Penguin. But the Penguin is like, I can't be having any more weaknesses. And so the Penguin kills him to get rid of a loose end. And it's so tragic. I felt really bad for Victor. He was such a a loyal friend. And God, it was so sad. But we end with Sofia getting a letter from Catwoman because, Selina and Sofia, they are sisters. So this is why I'm wondering, are they going to meet in the Batman Part 2? Like, what's going to happen? How are they going to meet? And are they going to show how Selina even came across this information? And what was on that letter that she wrote to her? But yeah, in conclusion, the Penguin, he gets his top floor with the view with his mom and his payroll girlfriend, who kind of then, in this very bizarre role play, she's dressed up like his mom, and he's just wants that dance with his mom. He wants his mom, so he's basically now paying his hooker to just role play as his mother, to just tell him things that he wants his mother to say to him. It's so twisted, kind of at the end. It's twisted, but it's sad. It was a great show, though. I really enjoyed the Penguin series. What about you guys? How are you feeling about the show? Did you read The Long Halloween or Dark Victory? Are you fine with a lot of the changes they made with these characters? I mean, I think it's fine. I think they did fantastic. But I would like to get any kind of feedback with you guys. If you stuck around for the spoilers, what are you expecting to see in the Batman Part 2? Anyways, it was a great show. I enjoyed it. Can't wait to the Batman Part 2. But that's it for this episode. Follow us on Twitter at ghettoplex_mp4, on Instagram at ghettoplex.mp4, and on YouTube at Ghettoplex. See you guys in the next one.